Welcome to Planet Waves TV for Monday, the 20th of June, 2016. My name's Eric Francis. It is good to be with you. Today's edition of Planet Waves TV will cover the closely related and in close proximity full moon that takes place on Monday morning, and then 12 hours later, the ingress of the sun into the sign Cancer. That's the Cancer ingress of the sun, or the northern solstice, or up here in the northern hemisphere, we call that the summer solstice. So they happen very close to one another, and that basically makes them not only the same event, but it has a kind of a multiplying effect. So to have the full moon located so closely to a large event like the solstice is to, instead of adding the two together, it's more like multiplying the two by one another. And this is particularly true given that the sun is entering a cardinal sign, a new season begins, and that is a time when there's a surge of energy coming up from the ground and basically from the entire environment that surrounds us. So the sun's ingress into a cardinal sign, that would be Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn, is a special moment, and it is marked as such in our society by remembering that we change seasons at that time. I'm going to show you the charts for that, but before I go there, I just want to remind you of one thing, which is that Mars is in the process of stationing direct. Mars has been retrograde first in Sagittarius, then because it's retrograde, it backs up, and it backed up into the previous sign, which is Scorpio, and the retrograde of Mars ends on June 29th. I recognize that as of today, and when most of you will be watching this video, that is more than a week off, but the process of Mars stationing, either direct or retrograde, takes a while, and when Mars is slow, which is what it is before it stations, changes directions, that is to say, its influence is more poignantly felt. And so while I'm going to talk about the full moon and the solstice, I want to prep you for what will really be the content of next week's Planet Waves TV, but you need the time to be thinking about this in advance. Astrology is less about prediction, in my opinion, and more about using forthcoming events as a means of cultivating the life that you want, resolving issues, getting obstacles out of your way. And so as an astrologer, that is my primary purpose, to assist you with the help of Lord Ganesha to remove obstacles from your path and to have the life that you want to lead. And one of the most important things you can do in terms of having the life that you want to lead is to focus on what it is that you want and to be honest with yourself about what it is that you want. And that is what Mars stationing direct in Scorpio is about. The world events of this whole Mars retrograde phase, again from mid-April out until late June, currently right now, have been extraordinary. And there has been a kind of a progression, a development, and I believe a gradual awakening around all the issues that surround Mars. And the issues that surround Mars are basically related to desire, and they are related to how we respond to being real about what we want. And I would suggest that this process of being real about what you want and of about emphasizing what you want and being able to be honest within your own consciousness about what it is that you desire from life is perhaps the single most important element of spiritual growth that we here in the West at least can engage in. And part of why this is true is because desire is so fraught with guilt. I've noticed at times in my own life and in the lives of many other people that it's difficult to say I want something without having some guilt response that follows it, or to have any idea of a pleasure that is not a guilty pleasure. It's not necessary to have that, and I think that when we experience guilt around desire, that is, first of all, a conditioned response. It is a self-limiting response, and it was conditioned into us as a self-limiting response intentionally by people who were in some way threatened by us. And generally, this all happened before the age of 2. Most of the most significant conditioning that we have happens when we are little fetuses inside the paradise of the uterus, and then when we are little babies being taken care of by all the adults around us who are then extremely generous in projecting their issues onto us. And kids, being highly sensitive, will respond. And so a retrograde planet such as Mars, for example, in this case, can indicate the suppression of desire. Now we've had 10 weeks approximately, I guess 9 at this point, of Mars retrograde, and that has been a kind of a review phase around desire. And the most important aspect of that has been getting through this kind of generationally conditioned neurosis about religion dictating what is appropriate for us to want, what is appropriate for you in particular to want, and going down to a deeper, more human, elemental, biological level of Mars in Scorpio, which is encouraging you to respond to desire on the hormonal level, on the physical level, on the level of your body. And I recognize that there's a kind of a mistaken belief that if people were to actually be conscious about what it is that they want, that there would be mayhem in the streets, and people would be, running wild and acting like savage animals, and the entire world would turn into an orgy. I mean, if it were that simple to do that, it would be great. But really, what happens is that when you acknowledge what you want, the thing that you're most likely to do is unhook the guilt that holds you back, to unhook the resentment that holds you back, and to begin a process of aligning with your desire that could reasonably be called the cultivation of integrity. And I think that the cultivation of integrity is essential in creating people who are aligned with reality. There's no need to be fighting yourself. Women in particular are conditioned to be at constant war with themselves. This was pointed out by Simone de Beauvoir in a book that I highly recommend for any female person, for any male person, that's to say anyone who can read, called The Second Sex by Simone de Beauvoir. Get the old translation. It will take you a few months to read this, but when you finish reading it, you will be transformed. And one of the things that Simone de Beauvoir points out is that women are conditioned to spend almost all of their energy fighting themselves, which leaves very little energy to take on the challenges of life. And so what I'm encouraging you to do is recognize who and what you want, recognize what you want to do, acknowledge what you know your purpose is in the world, and stop fighting yourself on this. When you make these kind of decisions around an event like, for example, Mars stationing direct in Scorpio, there is what I would describe as a cellular level encounter that you can have with yourself, where it is no longer necessary to be out of alignment, and where your choice is to be in alignment, in accord with yourself, go that much further. So let's put it this way. Decisions that you make right now, particularly with Mars stationing direct in Scorpio, one of the signs where it is the most powerful, count for more. It's a little like the therapy sessions that you do over the next week to 10 days or so. Count for 10 times the amount of work, because we are in this concentrated moment. We're in what you could think of as a fulcrum moment, where if you take any kind of a device and you move it a little bit at this end, the end where the result happens moves that much further. So it's like if you have a telescope pointed up at the sky and you move it a little bit, like this little bit, it's going to move light years on the other end. And so we are in such a fulcrum moment where the choices that you make now have the emphasis and the potential to get a lot of work done. Now, this is especially true. This is redoubled around a combination of the full moon and the solstice. So let's take a look at those charts and see what they are about. First of all, as you may know, the sun is at the end of its run through the sign Gemini, and there's always a kind of a beautiful moment, an opening, when the sun is at the end of a sign. We have one more day of that because the sun enters Cancer at 6:34:11 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on Monday. So we're in this special window where the sun is what's called void, of course, or anaretic. And when the sun in particular is in that position, I have seen in many years of practice and experiencing astrology, that is to say, not necessarily only reading all those books, but actually experimenting with these aspects. And my life has been one long personal experiment in doing astrology. A door is open and unlikely, unusual things can and often do happen. Let's look at the charts for now, as promised. First of all, the first chart is for the full moon. Here's the full moon. The full moon is moon opposite sun. At the moment of the full moon, the moon and the sun are always in opposite signs. So the moon is going to be in late Sagittarius. That's there, right at the end, right before Capricorn. So Sag goes in this direction, and the very last degree, properly 30 degrees of Sagittarius, in this case it's 29 and a fraction of a degree, is opposite the sun at 29 degrees of Gemini and a fraction of a degree, right on the cusp of the new signs. So when the full moon happens, the moon is going to change signs in about an hour. It's going to go from Sagittarius into Capricorn, and the sun is going to change signs in about 12 hours. It's going to go from Gemini into the sign Cancer. Note this is the second full moon in Sagittarius that we've had, because the first one happened right at the beginning of the sun's run through Gemini, and that because the lunar cycle is shorter than it takes the sun to move through a sign. When you catch a full moon or a new moon on the first day that the sun is in a sign, there'll be kind of a repeat event 29 days later, and this is exactly what we are having now. So it's not a blue moon. That's kind of a bullshit thing that's about a full moon, two full moons in one calendar month. The calendar month has relatively little to do with the celestial sphere. Our Western calendar is just, a kind of a low-tech device, to put it politely, and this is a much more high-tech measuring device. So we get this double, the second of two full moons in Sagittarius, and the interesting thing about this one is it happens at the very end of the sun's run through Gemini. It's also conjunct Pholus, the second Centaur planet, a very high energy, rapidly moving planet. So as I speak, the sun is the moon is moving into a conjunction with Pholus in Sagittarius. This in turn is conjunct the galactic center, which is also right back there, the center of our galaxy, our island of 300 billion stars in space, a relatively small local phenomenon, but the moon is lined up with the galactic core right now. It will be through the full moon and into the next few days. And there is a minor planet there, that is Pholus, that is cranking up the energy considerably, and we have a chance to use that odd thing about the door being open with the sun very late in its sign before it changes signs. Well, the moon is doing a similar thing, and so this is a moment of enhanced potential, and for many reasons we are entering an absolutely excellent moment of enhanced potential. Okay, so let's take one extra look at this planet. Now, here's Mars retrograde in late Scorpio, about 23 degrees of Scorpio. It is making an exact aspect to this group of planets in Aries. We've been talking a lot about that. That is the Uranus-Eris Ceres conjunction. The thing about Ceres is talking about two things. One, it's talking about how and what you nourish yourself with. And the second is it's talking about the level that you are on in your life, and it is strongly encouraging you to use the current astrology to get to a new level, to get off the level that you're on with its various obstacles and go one or two levels up. You will find it is much easier to solve your problems from there, I'm not exactly sure how to put that into the context of your life, but if you think about life, your existence as a kind of a journey where you are gradually climbing. That's a very kind of Western metaphor, but it is kind of what we do, or at least getting to a different altitude or a different perspective. What would your life look like from a different perspective, and what level do you want to be on in a year or in 2 years? There's a lot of mojo behind this Mars station direct, which is happening now because of this connection. Oopsie daisy, and it's kind of light. The connection to this cluster of planets. Mars is at 23 plus. This cluster of planets is at 23 plus. They are talking to each other in a very direct conversation, and the two signs where Mars is the ruling planet are involved. It looks more like this, where you have Aries here and Scorpio there, and they kind of mirror one another. If you hold the chart this way, you can see it. Oopsie, a little bit better. They are in a dialogue, and that is a real dialogue, and that is something that you are engaged in, a kind of a give and take process in your own life. So remember, we get a very unusual full moon door. We are in it now. The moon will be high and bright in the sky on Sunday night, wherever you happen to be, or whatever you happen to be listening to this. And then the full moon will peak Monday morning, again, 7:02 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Do the calculation for your time zone. Okay, here is the chart for the summer solstice. Now we can see the sun is no longer in Gemini. The sun is in the first degree of the sign Cancer. The moon has moved into Capricorn. By the way, the solstice takes place at 6:34 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So that begins a new season. And the new season is it is so real that it's undeniable, that animals feel it, the birds in the sky, and humans and everyone feels this alignment when a new season begins, and we change energetic modes. When the sun is at the end of a mutable sign such as Gemini, there is a dissolving and a disseminating quality that the sign has. So all of the mutable signs are transition zones into something else, and that something else they are is a preparation phase for the energy surge of the new season. That begins Monday evening, Eastern Daylight Time. A little bit later, the next day in England and in Europe. If you're down under, please do that calculation. It's always a little too much for me to figure that out and get it right. Australia is huge, besides the point. So when you combine the full moon and the solstice, you get this multiplication effect. And notably, this is what is called an Aries point effect, because when the sun enters the first degree of a cardinal sign, it's also an aspect to the first degree of all of the other cardinal signs. In addition, the sun entering Cancer is joining Venus in Cancer. What else is in there? Well, at the moment, it's just the planet Venus. So that's and an odd little guy called Kronos, which is about taking yourself seriously, but not too seriously. So the sun joins Venus in the sign Cancer. Planets in water signs are good for everyone, especially good for water sign people, quite good for earth sign people, but everyone needs to feel the, let's say, the grounded, emotional connection that planets in the water signs offer, in particular Cancer. Cancer is the only cardinal water sign. So when you have the sun and Venus in the sign Cancer, that is extremely dynamic and generally very positive for everyone. And it's saying, don't wait for things to happen to you. Don't wait for someone else to ask you out or tell you that they love you. Take the chance. Say it yourself. Be the one who opens up and who takes action, who opens your heart, who opens your home, and who is supportive of the world around you. I think, we do a lot of expecting to be supported by the world. I'm here to say that one of the best things that you can do in your life is to be supportive of the people around you, of the circumstances around you, and make sure that you are offering yourself as fully as you can. This is a very natural thing for humans to do, and with these planets in Cancer, it will feel good to do that. It will feel good to be generous, whether we're talking about making people food or being generous emotionally or just taking care of someone when they need to be taken care of. All right, that is my message for you. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to Planet Waves. I'll be doing a podcast, a new program of Planet Waves FM, which will launch on Planet Waves FM and planetwaves.net. Well, the light's changing quickly. On Tuesday evening. Then I'll be taking a break. All right. Good to work with you. Bye for now.